at the end of the day, your offerings, your products, your services are only as good as two things: your people and what you do for your customers.
Yeah. Welcome to That's What I Call Marketing, the podcast where you will hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. Today, I am joined by an incredible guest, Kaveri. Kaveri Camire, who is CMO of DXC Technologies. Now, before we get into today's episode, just a quick ask: if you enjoy the episodes or enjoying That's What I Call Marketing, you can do us a favor to rate a review, subscribe, like, share. It really does incredibly help us reach a new audience and keep our content top of mind out there, because I've said in previous episodes, and Fergus O'Carroll said it from On Strategy Podcast, it's getting harder for us as podcasters to use platforms like LinkedIn, even the likes of TikTok and Instagram. Definitely are seeing our content, but really want us to pay to promote. And it's a pay to play market. And we're doing this out of a passion for marketing, just really trying to share these incredible stories. And so if you can help us by sharing, it really does help us grow organic reach. So I'm kind of saying that maybe on behalf of the podcasting community, amazing people like the Sleeping Barber podcast, like ourselves and others who maybe don't have the support of bigger organizations behind them. So I'll move on from that, but really do appreciate your help in that regard. So on to today's episode with Kaveri and her role as CMO of DXC Technologies. We touch on her incredible career. She had a 20-year career at IBM, and it was after making a decision to move to the US and pursue a career. As a phenomenal career. We talk about her time at IBM, some of the things she's learned and taken with her. She's at DXC Technologies for just over a year. She joined in June 2024. We talk about what led to that move, and I said what were the things she kept with her as from her time at IBM that she's brought through to her role at DXC Technologies. We talk about the new brand positioning, we talk about international marketing, we talk about marketing team, we talk about culture, we talk about growth. It really is a phenomenal episode with an incredible marketing leader. Thoroughly enjoyed this episode. So let's get straight into it with Kaveri Camire from DXC Technologies. Kaveri, thanks so much for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I do have to, it's worth kind of just disclosing, we were meant to have a brief catch up in Cannes just to meet each other, and I was in completely the wrong place. So
it's all good.
I publicly apologize, and I appreciate that you gave me a second chance to meet up.
I am thankful that we got to do this nonetheless. Cannes, I hope, was a great event for you. It was certainly a good one for me.
Yeah. It's an amazing event. Well, listen, there's so much I want to talk to you about, but I was kind of, before we get on to kind of DXC Technology, but just talking about your IBM career, I was looking through that, and you've had an incredible career at IBM before moving to DXC. Like, it's hard to package up maybe 20 years in a couple of sound bites, but have there been things for you that you've maybe stood out, and in a way stood out that you've been kind of, I'm going to bring those with me to the next role? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting that you say that. 2 decades at an incredible organization, center of innovation. And for me, I've spent 27 years in the marketing and communications world, and largely in the B2B space. And I think my years of learning and growth were really spent at IBM. And I think what was really interesting and what has always been very intriguing to me during that period of growth and learning was that I worked for a large scale, multi-billion dollar global organization that was highly diverse, was in 160 or is in 160 plus countries. And there was this global operation, but had very local essence to the customers that we work for. And I think what's really unique about being in the B2B space and the tech world is that it's forever changing. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that right now. For me, some of the dynamic moments throughout my career were really around that collaboration at a global lens and looking at everything through a different lens of like, where would a customer want something that is completely different in a country like India versus the United States. The problems are probably similar, but how you unpack those problems are unique. And I was fortunate enough to be a part of building several market categories within IBM. One of them, just most recently, that I kind of worked on was hybrid cloud. We positioned it as a brand new market category. Today, it's $20 billion plus business revenue for IBM. So being a part of some of that, starting from scratch, not knowing where we're going to head, but then really declaring this market category was a monumental moment in time. And it took teamwork, it took collaboration, thinking, and then also just being a part of, I think I was probably a part of 20 plus mergers and acquisitions as
Okay.
IBM was sort of growing, and, a company that was kind of seeing itself in various places. And Red Hat, the $34 billion acquisition, and kind of making that a part of the narrative for hybrid cloud, AI. It has been an incredible journey of learning and growth. And those are the things that when I look at, it's the people at the end of the day and how they work together
Yeah.
is when things happen. And that's what I take most pride in, is just the kind of people that and innovation that came along the way.
There's so much I want to ask you about this because there's lots of things you touched on there, but one of them that stands out to me is how you navigate in large organizations, right? You've
Mm.
touched on about the size and scale of IBM, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger,
Yeah.
and sometimes it can be a challenge for people who want to navigate through that. But were there any kind of tips you picked along the way that kind of helped you find your way through a large organization?
I think it's very simplistic things, but to actually execute on them can become hard. To me, I think it really starts with the layer of humility where you, one, have the ability to ask and create a network. Think about an organization of 200,000 plus people. Sometimes the hardest part is, who do I go to? And
Yeah,
not just at the moment when you need them. It's really a very basic life principle, right? Having those right collaborations with your colleagues, with your customers, where it's not just that you get to them when you need something from them. It's really about having a united vision of, we're here to work with each other. I also think I was born and raised in India. I've been in the United States for about 27 years, as long as I've been in the professional world. And I am highly sensitive to the cultural nuances, which I think has been kind of the X factor that has
okay.
guided me
Yeah,
along the way, because it is very important to understand the cultural nuances of an organization and even our customers, which I alluded to in the earlier
yeah,
question, to say what works when Connor is based in Dublin, whereas another person is based in another part of the world. The way you receive and take information is very different. And then the last thing I will say is, I think having the common goal and objective of what are we trying to get at? And if customer centricity becomes central to an organization that everybody is marching towards, all the rest of the nuances are kind of separated, because then you're really targeting towards, I'm here to drive success for our customers together. And
yeah.
those are some of the things that have been, very intrinsic to my professional journey.
And I think that kind of cultural lens or multi-market cultural lens as a superpower almost is really interesting. Having worked in a global organization as well, getting that balance can be hard because there can be a lot of noise where people are
Yeah.
like, well, is that really the difference?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's the big thing, right? And sometimes, I mean, even like look at what's happening in the world of AI. I mean, it's all cyclical, right? We all went through the world of web, then came mobile, then things like IoT. And in all of these things, the common thread to me is the world is becoming tighter and tighter, where you're able to sort of really collaborate with people in a split second. 20 years
Mm,
ago, we didn't think that a world like that would happen. And today with AI, the journey is completely different, right? And I think even within that work, I see such difference in adoption of technology, like where we are in the United States versus where we are in some other markets. There are different dynamics, different regulations, different
Yeah.
mindsets. And to me, I mean, I know we will probably also talk about AI. To me, AI is as much technology as as it is people, processes, mindset. Who's ready to kind of be in the game to learn? And
Yeah.
that's the cultural, diversification as well in the adoption scale.
And it gives you then, I think, a wonderful lens and just a richness, doesn't it? When you have that
Yeah,
diversity of thinking and different
completely.
perspectives and different markets at different stages, and even how, as you said, how people want to receive information and the communication. I think it was Jessica Gilmartin, who was at Calendly at the time, said her team in Japan were saying we need to do really long webinars. And she was like, "No, I'm making them
Exactly.
shorter." And they're like, "No, no, no." And so, like, that's just, I love that stuff. I get really
It's great.
energized by it. Yeah, yeah. One of the things that you mentioned there as well was new categories and
Yeah.
framing. And again, as I was kind of looking through your background and your story, I kind of felt that there's this, you've a flair for narrative. And I don't want to diminish how you like frame a category, but like, do you think
Yeah.
that might be one of your other maybe superpowers?
It's so funny you say that because I think I always believe that everybody has to guide their own narrative for their personal life and professionally as well. And I think narratives, when told the right way, can be such a powerful tool. Sometimes I think we get so caught up in the nuances of differences that we forget to really focus on, well, what is it that truly matters?
Mm,
And for me, I think my biggest narrative, like I said, having grown up in India, born and raised in a very traditional family where, having a career was not something that was a part of the program.
right.
And I decided to create my own narrative. And I said, I want to be a professional. I want to challenge myself. And those are the things where you walk and make that change with a sense of humility. But I think with those learnings also come this idea of having an entrepreneurial mindset, the mindset of creating opportunities for yourself, to taking the right calculated risks where you are also iterating. I'm not a big fan of experimenting at scale. I don't
Okay.
think those things ever work. I'm
Okay.
all about, you know, start small, experiment, iterate, expand. And I think those are some of the things that, even as we started thinking about building these narratives where, I was talking about creating market categories, and even now at DXC, right? This is such an incredible time to be at DXC. It is also a global company, a
Yeah.
Fortune 500, working with enormously incredible clients and the heritage that we have. It's the story that we pull out, and that's what really attracted me to come to DXC, is it's that narrative of how this organization is differentiated with how long it's been with some of our clients and where we're taking them. But I think narratives have to be really aligned to an outside in thought as much as it is about who you are as a person or who
Yeah.
you are as an organization. It has to have the right juxtapose of what's happening in the market and what are you solving for,
Yeah.
and what are the problems that you are really unfolding, in a tech place through technology for your customers.
I love that because I love the outside in. I've talked about it before, but I've never, this is kind of weird. I've never thought about it in the context of your personal narrative.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to kind of, because I talk about it all the time. Like we're always like, we've got this thing to tell you, and we're like, boom, 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 and it has to be
Yeah.
outside in, and then that adds value. But I never thought about it as that way. So thank you for that
Of course,
insight.
I've been like personally a part of that journey, right? Where you break through and you do something different, and then you're like, okay, I have to build this narrative where you kind of break the norm. But when you break the norm is when sometimes, you get uncomfortable and innovation happens.
Yeah. Can I ask you then about the experimentation at scale? Because I find that interesting and I love experimentation and I agree with your approach. But my question is, was there experiment at scale that happened that made you realize this is not the way to go?
Actually, it's funny you say that. No, it didn't. But I think for me, it's always, when you are able to iterate on outcomes at a smaller level faster with rapid response, rapid outcomes, and then you start to test something and you start to see its impact, to me, then you kind of take steps to kind of expand on it, because I think to unravel big mistakes is very hard to come back from.
Yeah.
But to unravel and learn from, baby step mistakes, it's almost like, agile testing in a startup environment, right?
Yes.
To unravel a ginormous error when you're experimenting can be very difficult. So that's exactly what I am doing right now within my marketing function and the organization as well. It's such a great and interesting moment in time for marketers, as AI has become sort of really the hub of, an existential life cycle for
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah. Yeah.
where I'm telling my teams, become super learners and experiment in your areas. If you are in creative or you are driving lead generation programs, see what's working for you. And then I think for a global organization of our size, where we have 120,000 plus people, we start scaling. But
Yeah.
once you've experimented as working and you scale, I think the loss of what went wrong is smaller than
Yeah.
at a scalable environment.
Do you, and I kind of, I'll jump and then I'll come back to what the path into DXC, but I find that really interesting. Again, that idea of in your area, experiment, we'll figure out the things that did work, then scale it.
Yeah.
But another thing in larger organizations and global organizations is I guess the dissemination of learnings and sharing that it can be hard, and it's nothing to do with, I don't even think it's to do with time zones or fiefdoms or silos. I just think it's like, again, it's like navigating that in a large organization. Have you had any kind of things that you've done that have helped, or seen things in your teams that have kind of helped share learnings in like in a fast and fluid way? Like we did a deck and it was like, it was so manual.
I mean, I think even on that, and like, like I said, my entire career has been in very large scale organizations. And actually, I enjoy that because it has that challenge of coalescing everybody with different mindsets, different priority sets. To me, I think, and even when I joined DXC, the first thing I did was I identified where the big buckets of my organizational like team members were. And I went and met each of them personally. And it really is very basic. It has to start. And as in, like, I went to Australia. A large part of my team is in Australia. We went and spent 3 days together. It was my third week. And now I know them by name. I have a very different connection with them. And sometimes I think we lose sight of the very basic intrinsic value of this notion of collaboration that has exponential impact and that human connection.
Yeah.
I still think it sounds so basic, but I think with the world becoming so technology driven and so data driven, we're losing sight of, at the end of the day, humans are driven by emotion. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
what drives people to take action? Of course, it's the mind, but it's also the heart. And I think, to me, this might sound like a very soft skill, but I will tell you that is a huge difference in how you operate and move a global organization. But there are tools. So I use tools like Asana that bring
Okay.
everybody together with the same point of view. We are in the process of doing an AI training for my entire function, where we will all get on a call. And these are very basic things, right? And then we
Yeah.
will iterate and showcase where there are examples of like growth. So it has to be ambidextrous, where I don't think we should be losing sight of what this human connection is, but then also really declaring what are the tools that we have that are available to us today that has made this global world so much smaller
Yeah.
to interact in real time. And
Yeah.
that's absolutely possible, and people are doing it today.
Yeah. I have to say, if I was starting your role, I would have gone to Australia first as well.
And mind you, I it was a nearly 24-hour flight, and I was there for 3 days.
Oh
So
God, I would
it
have
was.
taken 3 weeks. That's a big commitment, I guess. And there's the point, I think, where people would then value that. And then I think surely, the impression I'm getting from you is that wasn't to tick a box and say I've met you. It's more now that you probably feel that people feel you're more accessible. Does that make sense as a leader?
100%. And I think the notion of accessibility is so critical because I think it become very quickly you kind of lose sight of what's happening, within your organization if you are, a CCO or CMO. And I think just to understand, I mean, that's the other thing that I just recently did with my organization. We did a survey of like asking our teams, what is pausing for you to embrace AI? What are the
Okay.
things that you're excited about? How much are you using it? Because you want to have the pulse. And it's, again, sounds very basic, but to me, AI adoption is as much of a mindset change as it is of really understanding how to use those tools.
Yeah.
So having a pulse on where people's mind is at, because sometimes it's really about being able to embrace change in a tech world, which is forever changing, which is what is so exciting about it. You got to have a team of people who are willing to adapt, pivot, be agile, and experiment, learn, fail. Those things have to be, and I always call it like this notion of super learners. You've
Yeah.
got to be a super learner.
Yeah, and it is interesting, isn't it, that there's going to be people who are at different levels of comfort with that. Like there's some people who are just like, I'm really worried.
Completely.
When it's about knowing that and then helping them. Maybe it's the super learners are the ones that are going to bring that other group along, but it doesn't mean they're less curious. They're just maybe more nervous or whatever it is.
Completely
I find it
agree.
fascinating.
Completely agree. Yeah,
Eh,
100%.
So it was in a year and a bit ago. Yeah. Oh, just June 24th, you joined DXC. Is that right?
Yes.
You're there a year.
Yes.
And I know when I was reading the mandate was to enhance brand positioning and accelerate growth, which is a wonderful summary to a job as a CMO, I think. How, like when you came in, apart from kind of getting to know people and understanding the systems, the processes, all of that, like what was your approach to kind of going, all right, how am I going to address this challenge or this opportunity,
Yeah.
probably is a better way of putting it.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that excited me about coming, as you can imagine, it was a significant decision to kind of
Yeah, yeah.
move from the mothership. But I think to me what was really important is I wanted to really again move into a B2B space with a global organization. And I think that's the one part that has always excited me because B2B space is that ever changing space that is so inherently innovative. And sometimes you don't see it because it's not a mobile phone or it's not, a consumer led like that you can touch and feel. But when you actually start to see the impact it's driving, it's ridiculously enormous. So when I
Mm.
started like unraveling like the power of DXC, as I was telling you earlier, we have heritage with hundreds and thousands of customers in markets all across the world. So United Airlines, they have what, 500,000 passengers on an annual basis that they fly from one place of the world to the other. And we manage all their mission critical systems. We also manage their app, which is almost like a concierge in the pocket
Yeah, yeah.
of a traveler. We are working with Singapore Hospital to manage antibiotic accuracy by 90% using AI. We just signed an amazing deal with Carnival Cruise, the
Oh,
cruise
yeah.
line for vacations, where we're managing the entire infrastructure. When does the cruise ship and the fleet is on shore? When is it boarded? Like every little intricacy of security and safety. So when I started kind of really unpacking the power of DXC, it kind of really made me realize the tremendous opportunity that we have. At the end of the day, every B2B organization is only as good as the outcomes and the innovation it's
Yeah.
driving for its customers. For me, walking into this journey was a no brainer, just understanding and learning more about the company. And that kind of urged me to say, this is a tremendous like powerhouse that we need to tell the world about.
Okay.
But with that also comes, I think to me personally, what was great was I didn't have a tech learning curve, and that can
Right.
become very complicated very quickly. I think the similarities in sort of really the innovation, the work, the services delivery that we bring to bear for the world, that didn't take very long. But I think what is really important is that you have the right connections with your sales organization. You have the right connection with your offering leaders. You have the right connections with the priority of, your CEO. And actually I talk to my CIO on a daily basis because we are creating new workflows in the AI space to make my organization become more efficient. So I
Okay.
think it's like kind of an ambidextrous scope of how do you establish your brand. You need to know the business as well as you need to know the craft and creativity and strategic critical thinking of marketing. And bringing those two together has been sort of really the foundation of how I'm building this out.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.
And it's like, it's early, you're only a year in or a year plus. And one of the things that has come out has been a new brand
Yeah.
platform. And, was that a decision that you made when you came in that we needed to do this, or was that underway?
It's really interesting because I think one of the biggest things, and I said, right, what attracted me to come to DXC was that there was such richness and wealth that this brand has, and it hadn't been told in the way that I think it deserves.
Okay.
So it actually just came together by design as we were even talking, because he's been with the organization 18 months. He was the board member prior to that.
Right.
He's been with the company for 18 months. So as we were talking and as I was coming on board, we had a very shared vision of there is so much to be told about DXC to the world that we haven't, which is where we embarked right off the bat on this journey. There were some very simple things that had not been done before that we started to do. And now we're also becoming a very data-driven organization. We are showing up at the right events. We are showing
Okay.
up in the right media stories. We are trying to create the right content. So we start to really have people recognize who we are and the powerhouse that this organization is. And to me, I'll again go back, at the end of the day, your offerings, your products, your services are only as good as two things: your people and what you do for your customers.
Yeah.
And I think DXC has best of the both. And I'm very fortunate that I have the opportunity to tell this to the world and market it out.
And in a way, it is interesting that a lot of marketers, and I've talked to both B2B, B2C marketers, and there are people who don't find the passion that you find in it, which I
Yeah.
find really interesting because, like you say, the impact, but also like it's almost the decision is bigger, right? B2B tends to be really large
It
business
is.
decisions. And so I guess in a way, your role of making sure that you're in the consideration set, giving the tools to people to know and tell the story. And then that closure
Yeah.
piece must be really rewarding because it doesn't happen, it's not in a 30 or 60-day cycle, I imagine.
I could not agree more. And thank you for saying that and bringing this up, right? Because again, in the B2C world, you almost can see and feel and touch a product. And the decision making by the customer can happen at that moment in time because you are experiencing it in real time. With B2B, I always say that when you look at DXC and the kind of customers that we work with and collaborate with, the world would not move without what DXC brings to the table for all of these customers. We work with, I think, 20 of the top insurance companies out of 25. We work with some of the largest hospitals, some of the largest banks in the world. We run mission critical systems for defense, and we drive citizen service for many governments all over the world. And as I said, if you look at Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, United Airlines, I mean, there are so many incredible examples of what we bring to the table for them, where if there was a pause in what we are delivering, there would be a pause in what they deliver for
Yeah.
their end customer. And that to me is the power of B2B, because you don't see it, but the mission critical impact it has on people's daily lives and the complexity that we solve for. I almost feel like we say, leave the complicated to us so you can give that amazing vacation to your customer.
Yeah.
So you can give that amazing travel experience to your customer. So you can make sure that your consumer who's transacting in your bank is getting the right customer, service experience. And that end result is very enriching, very rewarding. And that's what I like about B2B, the idea of it not being in front of you, but the
Yeah.
impact is so magnanimous that you almost feel that reward when you see the story come to life through this lens of, the outcome.
Yeah, yeah, it is amazing. And the other thing then within B2B marketing is because it's complex
Mhm.
purchasing and there's the committee or whatever we want to call it, how do you think about reaching decision makers? Because it is notoriously difficult to kind of reach the decision makers, make sure you're in that kind of top three or top two in
Yeah.
the early stages of shortlisting.
Yeah, I think there are many facets to that, right? Number one, I think I will start by sort of this notion of relationship building, because again, our customers who know us have been with us over decades, and we've taken them through multiple cycles of innovation. That's one piece where,
Right.
when I came on board in February, we launched the first, after a long time, a customer insight exchange. Where in a room, we got a bunch of our very key clients and we just listened. We listened because I really think that a lot of the companies today are constantly like at the customer, but they're not kind of hearing what the complexity is and what is the solve they're asking for. So to
Yeah.
me, it's again very basic of like having the ability to listen, because gone are those days where it's like, I'll reach you on top of the funnel, mid funnel, I'll
Yeah.
attack you through mass mail. Those things don't work anymore
I
because
love the
there
word
is,
attack.
I mean, it is there, everybody, there's this data deluge right now, right? Everybody's inundated with it. So and I always say this notion of like trusted ROI, right? That is the ROI today where your customers are able to trust you. But I also don't. So like I said, we got a bunch of our very top customers and we're doing this in multiple markets. In fact, we have one in Sao Paulo that's happening right now with 20 plus customers where we just get in a room for a day or two. And I'm so thankful that our customers take the opportunity and
Yeah.
see there's value in this exchange of dialogue, which then lends itself to how do we solve for the problems that they're dealing with today? That's number one. And then the second piece of it is really marketing as a function has evolved so much where we have an opportunity to bring such tremendous automation in how we drive leads, how we show up with analysts, how we show up with advisory firms, how we show up at events, and how do we show up differently at events. So
Mm.
those are, and I mean, I think I also would not refute the power of communications where in my mind I was asking our customers, what is the form of communication you use? What do you read or watch if you
Yeah.
wanted to know about a certain offering? Hands down, they all said short video format is where I like to start.
Okay.
So sometimes it's almost also knowing how your C-suite or whoever your cohort that you're targeting, how are they receiving information that will drive impact to then go deeper.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's another thing that we've launched. We've launched like short videos, the stories of a customer, because in my mind, a 50 chart deck may not do anything, but an under 1 minute video that
Yeah.
really talks about the value and the savings by another customer can be like your biggest sales pitch.
Yeah, and we forget again when we think about B2B marketing, and I've talked about this before, but like we go into personas and decision makers and C-suite, and then we forget that these are people who are commuting or, and are consuming
Absolutely.
media in the same way and I love the word attack, don't want to be attacked by our messaging. They
Yeah.
want to be engaged in some way by it, right?
They want to be heard.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I was talking to the CIO of Carnival just yesterday, the client that I'm just talking about, and I said, what was the reason why where you made the decision where we were in
Wow.
the decision making
Yeah, yeah,
cycle? And there were three things he said. He said DXC has the depth of full stack engineering and technical chops like no one else, which is really where the rubber meets the road. You can claim whatever, but if
yeah,
you're
yeah,
really, really delivering on the engineering that your customer expects from you, that's a big differentiator. And then the two other things he said was, he said, you actually listened to my problems, and it was a unanimous decision outside of the CIO who said, DXC engineers and experts came in and listened to the problem. So
wow.
those are things that matter today in
Yeah.
decision making cycles.
Yeah. It's lovely to get that though as well, post the
Yes.
deal, or and even when it doesn't work, like
Go
where
wrong.
was the miss? Like where was that? Because that can be as powerful. You touched a bit on the marketing team, and without getting into kind of too much detail of all the people and what they do, but like just generally, how do you think about how you like to structure your marketing team? And when you came in, were you kind of going, right, I need to, sit, have a look, see what people are doing, and did you have to make any changes just to suit again maybe your view of what a good marketing structure looks like?
Yeah, and I think, yes, of course. I mean, I think it was about just really assessing one talent to, or is the talent aligned to where our target audience and
Yeah,
buyer set is from a market perspective. That was very important. And then also just looking at all the various aspects of where and how the talent sits. Do we have the right people who create content? And is it compelling content? And how do we make it data driven? The other big thing, and I am a big proponent, as much as I talk about, human connection, collaboration, if you are not informed by data, then you're really marching on a journey that has no destination. And to me, that was really important to really create a cohort of teams and in partnership with my CIO and the IT office to say, what is working for us and what's not working for
yeah,
us,
right.
and having the right team that does data analytics on a regular basis and building that muscle was really important. And then also on the creative side, right, at the end of the day, how do you differentiate yourself creatively? How, and I don't just run marketing, but I also run the communication side of the
Yeah,
house. So how are we communicating and showing up in the world? What are the things that we're talking about? And are we in the conversations that we must be at? I also strongly believe it's not always about having the largest organization, especially in the world of AI.
yeah,
It's really about very quickly adapting the tools and being entrepreneurial in embracing those, and having, I call them super ninjas in the scope that you work for. So you're not touting, I have the biggest fattest organization, but you have to have lean influence
yeah.
is what I
I like
think
that.
of as
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think about my organization.
I like that, and I do love because you do come across people who are empire builders, and to
Yes.
them the number is
Yeah.
their self worth is determined by the number of people they have reporting into them, and I always
Yes.
am amazed by that because I'm like, my God, that's a lot of work. And
That's right.
and then I guess what you're saying there is like making sure you've got the right people doing the right things, but then as having paths for people for that growth, but make sure that the capabilities and the competencies are there as
Completely
well.
agree.
So constant, like, do you have learning? I know curiosity is something that you care deeply about, and
Yes.
I do as well. So have you got kind of a way of kind of building a culture of curiosity and learning?
100%. And I think any function today, especially in marketing, if you don't have a culture of curiosity and learning, I think it's, like I said before, it's existential. I think, one of the things that I'm also encouraging is learning doesn't have to always be tops down. Learning can be and should be grassroots. So, what I'm doing right now is we've literally empowered my entire function to say, if you're in creative services, and if you haven't used VO3 or you haven't used Midjourney, I'm just naming some
Yeah, yeah,
tools, go experiment, go learn and see what the use case is, what your outcomes are, how are you becoming efficient. It doesn't always have to be, let me organize for you, especially in this world of AI
yeah.
where there are new tools coming every day. So for me, I think giving our teams the access and the freedom to be entrepreneurial, he is extremely agile, extremely entrepreneurial, and he's pushing all of us, his leaders and the entire organization, to say it doesn't have to be tops down. It
Okay.
actually has to be taking your journey of growth and learning in your own hands. But it's again also ambidextrous, where we've created this AI Sherpa within my organization where this person is coming in and teaching us the nuances of, what workflows will work for you. How do you create a framework for yourself? So it's both ways. But for me, at the time and place we are in the world, everyone has to take learning in their own hands, including myself,
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
us.
yeah. Where do you find the time for it?
You have to make time for things that
I'm
are
looking at
a
you. You're
priority.
busy.
You have to make time. I always say this, and there is a power to say no, because I think as humans we have a tendency to say yes to so many things that we end up not doing anything beautifully.
Yeah.
So I you have to have the discipline and have the power to say no to many things that may not be additive to your journey, and really focus on things that truly matter to you.
How do you make those decisions? Like, because it is, I, some, I guess previously said to me that no is a complete sentence, which I love because I think that's just a brilliant way
It is.
of putting it. But how do you then, like, how do you figure out actually that's something I need to say no to? Because it is hard. You're right.
I think you have to make that judgment call for yourself. And I think when I say saying no, it doesn't only mean in your professional life, but also your personal life, right? How many things are you sort of really tapping yourself out for, where at the end of the day, you don't have the time? It's simple, like way of prioritization, but it's not easy.
No.
It's not always easy, but I think you have to make a judgment call. For me, I think I've said this multiple times before, health and fitness is really important for me. So if that means I have to work out every single morning, which I do, sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the time I shut my door and I have the power of saying no to my entire family, because that's the time that I need for myself. So I think it's those personal decisions you have to make that then filter through in your professional life as well. And sometimes when you're in the junior levels within the organization, it is hard to say no. And
Yeah.
that's where you have to also manage up to help understand, how do you prioritize. A great mentor of mine once said, your prioritization is, what are the three things that you're working on,
Yeah.
and finish those and then get to the next list. At any given time, work on the three things and get them done. And if
Yeah.
you have 10 things, chances are you're not going to do any of them
Any
really
of them
well.
well, 100%. And I think then as well for leaders noticing the clues where somebody might be worried that saying no might be a career limiting move or something.
And that's why I think as leaders, it's also on us to create not a culture of fear, but create
Yeah.
a culture of innovation and collaboration. And there will be times we all, like, if anybody says, I've got it worked out perfectly right, work-life balance, no,
Yeah.
there's nothing like that. That's when you prioritize and figure out what works and when it works. And as leaders, we have to create a culture of collaboration and open communication. And it's hard. And this is why you have to have a pulse into your organization on how the teams are feeling, how everyone's doing. And sometimes it's hard.
Yeah. Because people don't always tell you what they really think. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
hard, but it's a journey, right? Again, if
Exactly.
anyone had the answer, they'd have retired and be living on an island
Exactly.
somewhere.
There you go.
I did want to ask you, and I kind of I got off, so it's kind of a bit of a tangent to go back into some of the work in DXC. But I was interested, obviously, at sponsorship with Manchester United.
Yep.
And I was a long suffering fan, and I've inflicted my 8-year-old with the same thing. It's a wonderful partnership. But what's interesting is it's obviously consumer in that it's broad consumer. But what's interesting is when you dig deep is actually the partnership is doing some of the things you talked about. Like it's powering
Exactly.
stuff for Man United, which I found really, really interesting. It obviously it does predate you, but like how useful has that been beyond maybe the powering of what it does for Man United, but also have you be able to utilize it in other ways?
Yeah, I think so. Like you said, it predates me. And I think with sponsorships like Manchester United, and actually we also have a tremendous partnership and collaboration with Ferrari.
Okay.
And those sponsorships and partnerships are great because, one, and I'll talk a little bit about both, right? With Ferrari, they are a customer of ours. And we work with them on their factory floors. And we have just recently launched the entire infotainment system of their F80 supercar. So to me, sponsorships really go, yeah, it's pretty cool
Oh
stuff.
my God.
So, these sponsorships go hand in hand, right? Where not only are you bringing the brand logos together
Mm,
and the brand halo of an iconic brand like, Ferrari, but you're also really delivering on the business value for these brands. So we show this cross collaboration and symbiotic relationship where I truly believe that a sponsorship should not just be an empty sort of, here's my brand, here's your
Yeah.
brand, let's work, let's show up together.
Yeah.
There's value in that, but that can only go so far. When you see the DXC logo on the Ferrari car, it's very exciting for that initial aha with Hamilton and Leclerc. And
Yeah.
who is not excited by F1 and Ferrari,
It's
right?
that. Yeah.
But I think to us, what's really important, and to me and the leadership team at DXC is really important, is that we are also delivering a client-led value for our sponsors or our sponsorships like Ferrari and Manchester United.
Yeah, and like so, there's like proper depth to it. It's not, as you
Oh,
say, it's not a
absolutely.
badging exercise. It's we're working deeply with these organizations to provide value, and that's what I loved about it when I was looking into it. I was like,
Yeah.
that was real. Yeah, it's a real partnership.
There's real backbone and
Yeah,
technology operation behind the brand connectivity, which is what
yeah,
attracted us to the likes of Ferrari and Manchester United. It was really just making sure that we are also delivering that technical value. In fact, I will be visiting their factory floor in Maranello in September. I'm
I
so
know.
looking forward to seeing things in
Oh my.
action. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Oh, that would be amazing. That would
Yeah,
be something else.
for
That
sure.
is okay. Let's call that a perk.
Okay, fine.
That's well. Listen, it's a tough job, and that's maybe a place to kind of wrap up in a sense. Is and I've talked to so many CMOs. Being a CMO is a tough job. There's an incredible pressure. We all know in marketing that we need to build for the long term, but there's incredible short term business pressures.
Yeah.
And it's also, you're the top marketer in the organization, and that can come, I don't mean loneliness as in personal loneliness, but it's hard. How do you manage that, and how do you kind of think about that, and any, I guess, advice for others in a similar position?
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely valid. It's a very fair question, and I think any C-suite comes with a level of very serious pressure and responsibility and accountability, because not only are you responsible for the growth and evolution of your particular business or function, but you're also responsible for the business growth. I think and I think for marketers and CMOs in particular, I always see the CMO as like the glue that stitches different views together, right? There's
Yeah,
somebody sitting in the offering world, there's somebody sitting in markets. They may have very different perspectives. How do we bridge that together? How do we build a cohesive narrative that really sings the same song for everybody? It's like an orchestra that has various, dimensions to it. And if one goes offbeat, the entire orchestra
yeah, it sounds
is kind of
awful.
messed. And I think you are sort of at the center of, like, driving that, which comes with tremendous accountability and responsibility. But I do think it all goes down to, are you tightly aligned with the business pressures and the business objectives? You've got to be very, very clear on having that brand, focus is very important, but are you really a partner to the business to actually drive growth? I mean,
Yeah,
I'll give you a very clear example. I came in and I saw that we had X number of events and X number of, spend for those events. And the first thing I started doing is unraveling, like, why are we spending so much? What is it getting for us?
yeah.
Is it driving conversion? And we've cut that down by 50%. Our spend
Okay.
is down 50%. Our number of events that we show up is down 50%, but our conversion rates are higher because we are now becoming really targeted. Why I tell you that story is because I think having that keen eye to understand, where are you driving cost savings and where are you doubling down to actually
Yeah,
help drive impact. I think many marketers stop at pipeline. You've got to be aligned to drive business growth and conversion. And this is where your partnership with your sales leader, your partnership with the CEO, your partnership with the CFO is critically important, where you are saying you're not just, marketing cannot be just a cost center.
yeah.
Marketing has to be the hub and spoke of growth along with the rest of the business. And if you're able to sort of find that right dynamic, and really be laser focused on business priorities, I think that really changes the game for the CMO.
Yeah, and sorry, and they're tough decisions to make as well.
Very
Yeah, not easy, but again, going back to your point earlier, data led.
data led.
It wasn't
Yeah.
you coming in going, "Here's a list. I'm going to take off 3, 7, 10."
Now,
Yeah,
It has to be data led. And even today, I'm like literally looking at all the events that we've invested in. What's the pipe? What's the conversion? Like I'm just giving an example of the
Hmm.
things that we're doing, right? And how are we also making it faster, easier for our sellers? We've incorporated AI into the ability where a seller can look at a lead with aligned to the offerings that we sell and all the client stories that we have. It's now incorporated into our AI workflow. So now a
Right.
seller can say, here's a lead. If there's an SAP offering, we have an SAP customer, it's all right there for the seller to take action. So it's at the speed and pace at which we are enabling our sellers to take action also matters. That's what we're here for. We're here to help the business grow and our sellers sell,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
also listen to the customers.
100%. And it just like, I mean, through this conversation, again, where we started, I guess, was, you've come in to this organization, and there's obviously so many things that you've learned that you've been able to bring with you. And I imagine things you've left behind as well that you're like, no, that's not right for here.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I've learned a lot, and I think knowing the tech space really well, knowing how to operationalize things at a global level, those are two like very complicated things that if you don't get right, then you cannot move at the rate and pace that is demanded of you in the environment that we're in. There's no time to wait and ponder. It's
Yeah.
execution and strategy at rampant pace, but also innovation because everything is changing and everything will be rewritten
Yeah.
with AI. So I think you have to be acutely aware of how the world is evolving, but more importantly for me, how the marketing function is evolving. And
Yes.
either you're on that journey or you're not.
It 100% sounds like that you are, and
Yes.
your team is, and DXC is at the forefront of driving so much impact, more than I knew actually genuinely before I kind of really started digging and researching. And it's been fascinating to have this conversation with you. And thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing your insights, because I love when I speak to CMOs and they're so open, and you've been incredibly open, and I genuinely appreciate that.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time and learning a little bit more about DXC. And I'm glad to hear that you see the impact that the company has in the world as well. And thank you for taking the time.
No problem. We just have to keep cheering for both of the Reds that you guys sponsor as well.
That's right. That's right.
Kaveri, thanks a million.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. A truly amazing guest. Really, really enjoyed talking to Kaveri. Her insights, and as I said to her at the end of the episode, what I love when I have episodes like this is when you get somebody being just really honest. There was no preparedness in her answers. We kind of shared a general where we'd go with the conversation, but there was nothing that was held back. She was really honest in her responses to me, and I felt it was really useful. There was stuff in there, like you can clearly hear it in the episode. I'm like, oh my God, I'd never thought about that way. And I always look for that and hope for that in these episodes. And with somebody of her experience and working at the level that she's working at, operating at that level, even the things that just resonate with us as marketers, the challenges, the way she operates, the way she thinks about things, I think gives you reassurance in some ways that you are doing the right thing as a marketer, but also adds another level of insight and usefulness. And I love her passion for B2B marketing. How great is that? We need more of that in this world. So I hope you enjoy the episode, as I kind of say in all our episodes, intros and outros. If you can help, the one thing you can do is to like this episode, share a clip, like a comment or comment on LinkedIn, share an episode with someone you think might enjoy it. It just helps grow the reach of the podcast and the audience. And the great thing is we continue to grow, but really looking for your support. I say it just gets harder and harder. The platforms certainly are looking for us to pay more to play, so that creates a challenge for us. So that is it. Rant over from me, your host Connor Byrne. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll take care. So for me, your host Connor Byrne, thank you so much for tuning in. So until the next episode, take care.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.